Good morning again.
Okay, so we're...
Welcome to the 20th anniversary of 9/11.
I'll be right under the TV.
We all know where we were 20 years ago, whether we were in Florida, New York, California. We all know that that day changed our lives forever. Today we're here to remember those souls that passed away that day, whether they were active duty, going to work, coming home, whatever. We're not here for a political event. Can you hear in the back? I thought I had taken care of that when my daughter called me and said, "Hey, we can't hear you in the back." Can you hear me now? Better? Need it higher? Up higher, please. We good? Not good. Back away from me further? Take it out and hold it. How about that? How about that? Can you hear in the back now? All right, we're good. We all know where we were, who we were with, what we thought the rest of that day, and from time since then. We've remembered it over and over and over. Today we're here to continue that memory and pay respects to those that passed that day. Before I introduce our Master of Ceremonies, a couple of quick questions, or not questions, but facts. The bathroom, as I said earlier, is in the back. It's the big white thing, past the end of the tents. Cell phones, please take them and put them in your silent mode. I've done mine, please do yours. Last, if you need water during the service or anything like that, kind of wave your hand. We've got people walking around with water that can bring it to you. At this point, I'd like to introduce John Wilson, our Master of Ceremonies. John Wilson's retired primetime news anchor from WTVT Fox Tampa in 2004. He spent 50 years in radio and television, which earned him 3 television Emmys for commentaries and TV news broadcasts and awards by the Broadcasters Club of Florida and the Florida Motion Picture Television Association. The veteran reporter and anchor covered world-shaking events in Washington, Moscow, the Middle East, France, Haiti, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, Romania, and Panama. John is a U.S. Army veteran, and he is Vice President of Wilson Media in St. Petersburg. Please welcome John Wilson.
One of the things I learned to do very quickly is move furniture. We just need to get out of the line of the speakers a little bit to make this a little easier for you to hear, because we've got a lot to tell you. I'll start with good morning, and I am John Wilson, who used to anchor the news on WTVT until my son Mark came along and took my place. So Mark sends his greetings to you as well. It is a pleasure to be with you today for this I can't overstate the word important, for this important commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the attack on America. And every time I think about those words, it gives me pause. As many of you will remember, it was a Tuesday morning in September of that year that will haunt us forever. And it's one thing in all of our lives that we will never, ever forget. Just to remind you, 4 commercial planes were involved in the attack. 2 hit the World Trade Center buildings in New York. A 3rd hit the Pentagon outside Washington. And a 4th plane was headed for the White House, or the U.S. Congress, the Capitol building that dedicated Patriots force down near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. The catastrophic fatalities on that day are profound. We don't have time this morning to go over all of the numbers that followed in the 20 years after 9/11. But I will remind you that 2,977 people were killed, including the 19 hijackers who committed murder-suicide, and more than 6,000 were injured. The fallout in the 20 years that followed, as you know, was also catastrophic, including the 13 American service members who were killed last week. It still gives me pause to even think that it happened, like all of you. The average age, by the way, of the dead in New York City on 9/11 was 40. The youngest victim was 18, an emergency medical worker, and an additional 24 people are still listed as missing. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you to stand now for the honor guard from the Palm Harbor Fire Rescue and the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. The honor guard includes bagpiper retired District Fire Chief Tom Fritz, Sarge the Eagle from the George C. McCuff Nature Park.
Honor guard, hut, hit, hook, carry, color. Mark time, hook, to the left, forward, hook, to the left, right, 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 to the left, right, hook, right, right, forward, left, to the left, right, to the left, right,
Now the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join us. It will be led by Palm Harbor Fire Commissioner Julie Peluso.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Pastor Mark Watrochis from the Chapel Community Church, who will offer our invocation. And before we do that, we have what could be a surprise for you. Keep your salutes, because our national anthem will be led by one of the most talented singers and performers in this country. We all know him. And it is a pleasure to welcome Mr. Lee Greenwood.
Thank you. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land home of the brave.
Can we bow our heads? Dear Heavenly Father, we remember and honor today those whose lives were lost in the catastrophic events of September 11th, 2001, 20 years ago. We give thanks for the selfless courage of those brave first responders who ran into burning buildings and who labored in the face of fear and death to save and rescue others. On this day of solemn remembrance, we honor their legacy of courage, their legacy of selflessness, their legacy of commitment to serve. We remember and give thanks to those who rendered aid and assistance for the sake of others. Lord, we ask for your blessing and that you may give comfort to those who live with loss, and may we seek justice and peace where it is within our ability, and rely on you, O Lord, when the ability escapes us. May the courage of those first responders 20 years ago be a witness as a lasting example of what is possible when we are guided by love and dedication to our fellow human beings. We pray today for the continued healing of all the family and friends suffering emotional and physical scars and loss. May your Spirit breathe healing into our minds and hearts of those who lost loved ones, family members, and friends 20 years ago. May we move from suffering to hope, from brokenness to wholeness, from anxiety to courage, and from death to life, and from fear to love, and from despair to hope. Lord, today as we remember and honor those who sacrificed so much in the face of danger and fear, we ask that you guide our steps with strength and inspire us with your hope. Dear Lord, cause us always to remember and honor the selfless act of those heroes who gave their lives to save others, and may their bravery motivate us to remember that each day is a gift from you. We ask this in no other name above heaven and earth. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pastor, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing. You may be seated. It is now my pleasure to introduce the 9/11 contest winners who inspired us with their creativity and semblance of the anniversary that we celebrate today. The first place winner is Reese Abercrombie, 6th grade from Tarpon Springs Middle School. Reese, congratulations. The second place winner is Michelle Caragosia, 7th grader from Palm Harbor Middle School. Congratulations. The checks for the winners are presented by 9/11 event committee members Kevin Doherty, retired FDNY, and Joseph Sprouse, retired FDNY. Now, I want to ask the winner, Reese Abercrombie, to come up and read her essay to you. Hi there. You want to hold the mic?
Hi everyone, I'm Albert Bromby. Writing an essay focusing on a hero from the tragic events of 9/11 is difficult for me. This is partly because I was not alive to witness the events firsthand. However, there are many places for students like me to learn about what happened on that day. Having done some research, I was given yet another challenge, which is having to choose only one hero from the many, maybe even thousands, that deserve to be recognized. There are many stories of the first responders and members of the military who respond to bad situations, often with great courage. But in my opinion, the passengers and crew of Flight 93 deserve the title of hero because they worked against the terrorists and protected thousands of other lives while sacrificing their own. These were average people that responded in above average ways, and in the process, they more than earned the title of hero. It is believed that the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. was the intended target of the terrorists. No matter the desired target, the lives of those on board the plane were in danger. And if they did nothing, so would many lives on the ground, especially if the terrorists piloted Flight 93 into the Capitol. After calling loved ones to tell them of the hijacking and to share any final goodbyes, some passengers discussed their options and agreed to fight back. Even though the passengers and crew were different ages and backgrounds, they were all in the same personal sacrifice. Some even lost the opportunity for important life experience like graduating, marrying, having children, buying a home, or working in a career that they love. Their gift of protections to thousands of strangers came at an incredible cost, and this is the type of sacrifice that we commonly associate with heroes. The National Park Service notes that Flight 93 had only a small fraction of the total number the passengers the plane could carry. The other planes involved in 9/11 were also light in terms of their passenger loads, which is believed to be intentional planning by the terrorists so they might limit any disruption to their planes. The small but mighty team on Flight 93 were able to successfully push back against the terrorists. This is remarkable that these strangers and ordinary people fighting against a well-trained terrorist group. Also, some of the passengers and crew members ended their calls with loved ones so they could fight back against the plane's hijackers. If you ask me, that is a big personal sacrifice. This is why these people deserve to be called heroes. To conclude, these ordinary people sacrificed their own lives in ways that protected thousands of other people. What must have been an ordinary morning of travel ended up being something much different for them. And because of their courageous response, we will remember them as the brave heroes that they are. I hope that as an average student, an ordinary young lady, and I hope someday a typical woman, I will act as the same type of care and concern for others, mixed with bravery and courage throughout my life and whatever it brings.
Reese, thank you very much. You gave us a lot to think about. Are we okay? Okay. Got pictures? All our pictures? Okay. Now the Florida Speaker of the Florida House of Delegates, Chris Sprowls.
Let's give it up one more time for that young lady. I told them behind the stage, y'all must not like me and having me follow her. You know, I don't think I've missed one of these over the years as we've gathered here at Curlew Hills together as a community to honor those who died in 9/11, to remember their sacrifice. But as that young lady just walked off the stage, I probably did what many of you have done today, which is to remember where I was at that moment. Guaranteed every single one of you remembers exactly where you were the moment you realized that the towers were under attack. One of the gentlemen who was just up here shares my last name. He's my dad, and he's a retired New York City police officer. But that day, he wasn't in uniform, he wasn't a police officer anymore, he was in a classroom, teaching history, teaching government, civics, teaching about America and its greatness. And I was in high school, and I, as a high school senior, walked into his classroom as I had him once a day for 4 years. Yeah, it was tough. And he said, someone came in and they said a plane has hit the World Trade Center. We turned on the television, and it wasn't too long after that we saw a second plane. And I remember him saying to us, "You're not going to switch classes today. You're all going to stay here. You're all going to watch. Because America is under attack, and your lives will never be the same. Our country will never be the same." And we stood there all day and we watched as men and women in uniform, like the ones who are scattered throughout the audience and to our right and left today, ran in and out of the towers, saving lives. As members of the clergy, like the one who led us in prayer today, gave last rites and prayed with those who were dying and dead outside the World Trade Center. We watched helplessly as that happened, as we lost our neighbors and friends and fellow Americans. In the days that followed, we watched with anger after the Pentagon was struck. And as we gather here today to remember those who sacrificed so much, as Abraham Lincoln once said, it's altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, today is not just about remembering, although it is a great deal of what we do today. It's not just about remembering those who sacrificed that day, but also about remembering the greatness of America. Remembering that it is heroism in moments like that, where men and women dressed in uniform would gladly trade their life for ours. The realization that our neighbors are willing to give so much to people they've never met. And the reality is, every day we see them. We see them in the Publix and supermarkets, on the street. They show up when we need them, and we rarely know their name. On those days, the men and women who ran into those towers, chances are that people didn't know their names either. But it didn't change what they did. And it shouldn't change how we feel as we remember all the sacrifices that they give. And as we look back on that day, we remember those who passed, but we celebrate the men and women in uniform who are with us today, who are serving throughout our nation, guiding us and protecting our families. We remember that day as a way to remember what we are capable of. Sure, we're capable of fighting with each other and arguing on the evening news. That's easy. But we remember the greatness of America, where almost every single house after that day had an American flag, where we were all united with a common purpose, to mourn those we've lost, to be focused on our common enemies, and to remember that no matter our differences, whether they're political, whether we worship differently, whether we have different kinds of families, we are all united, and that we are all Americans, we all believe in freedom, we all have a right to survive, and that when provoked and attacked, we will rise up through the ashes, we will defend our nation, and we will regain our strength. I have two little boys, they're 4 and 5. And I quite haven't been able to fully explain to them the gravity of what September 11th means, but one day I will. Surely their grandfather will help. But I will tell them about the men and women that day. I will tell them about what it means to be an American, and I will remind them that while they weren't there for September 11th, it is their American legacy, it is our shared legacy, that is who we are as a people, and it is who we will always be. God bless you all. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much. Now from the United States Congress, it is a pleasure to welcome Pinellas County's own Representative Gus Bilirakis.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it. There are some events, ladies and gentlemen, that forever alter the landscape of history. These moments and how we respond to them reveal a great deal about who we are as people and what we value as a society. I know you agree. September 11, 2001, 20 years ago today, our nation faced one of those pivotal moments. Personally, I remember the horror, the frustration, and anger I felt when I learned of the first attacks. An hour later, we saw the attack on the Pentagon, followed by Flight 93's crash in Pennsylvania. And we all knew without question that our country was enduring a well thought out, coordinated terror attack against American civilians, unfortunately. This was unlike anything we ever previously experienced. No American will ever forget the horrific images and tragic stories that were broadcast the following days. Those stories and images broke our collective hearts, and we all grieved for the 2,977 lives that were taken too soon. Many of us knew someone impacted, and even if we didn't personally know someone, we identified with the pain their loved ones felt. After all, those innocent lives that were taken could have easily been our brothers, our sisters, our children, or our friends. Some of those previous, again, precious lives were brothers, sisters, family, and friends of those here today. May their memories be eternal. My heart especially goes out to Ann Coster, who is a 9/11 survivor, for the trauma she had to face that particular day. And I commend her for the courage and strength she carried over the past 20 years. I believe she's a resident of Palm Harbor. What a great community we live in. I want to extend a special thank you to the retired firefighters, police officers from New York that are here with us today, and I just met one. I met a hero, a true American hero. You are the ones that battled the blaze and smoked the early morning of 9/11, and then for days and months conducting search and rescue and then recovery. Extraordinary. Most people don't realize those heroes woke up every day and continued to work long shifts. After work, they would go to ground zero to help with search and rescue and recovery. And then they attended funerals almost every day for several months. I also want to commend our Palm Harbor Fire Department firefighters and essential workers that went up to New York to join in the search and recovery efforts. Let's give them a hand. They too are our heroes. We know that was a sacrifice. It really was a sacrifice, but it's a part of the fabric of your character and spirit to serve side by side with your brothers and sisters of the FDNY. Thank you so much for your service. We are forever grateful. In addition to the collective heartbreak, there was also a tremendous sense of unity during the days that followed 9/11. And Dick Martin, who's a great friend of mine, has done so many work. He said, let's never forget 9/12, how we felt on 9/12. We were all one people. We were all Americans. And what brought us together was so much greater than our differences. Don't you agree? During that time, I also remember a tremendous feeling of pride swelling within our country. The term hero gets thrown around too much, in my opinion. And again, our firefighters, our first responders, our police officers, definitely our military, our veterans, they are true American heroes. And we must never forget that. On that faithful day and many that followed, we saw true acts of heroism abound. Countless fire rescue, police, and other first responders ran into burning building extraordinary, knowing that they likely would not survive, but trying to save as many lives as possible. We saw co-workers, friends, and even strangers helping each other, doing everything possible to ensure others reach safety. We saw passengers on a plane regular everyday Americans. Let's roll. They hatched a plan to thwart further disaster, knowing that even if they failed to land the plane safely, they could keep it from being used to kill more people at its intended target. And they succeeded in their mission. Let's roll. Yes, 9/11 revealed who we are as a people and what we value, ladies and gentlemen. Our enemies sought to destroy our way of life. Instead, they discovered the depths of resiliency and the strength of our resolve and our unwavering commitment to one another. There's nothing like being an American. Right, ladies and gentlemen? It's so true. It's so true. I'm so proud to be an American. And I know we're going to hear the song, and he's one of my favorites, there's no question. It's an honor to get an opportunity to meet him. But he's not the hero. Again, our veterans, and he knows that, and we're certainly not the heroes or politicians. It's our veterans and our first responders. United in our love of freedom and for our fellow Americans, we vow to make the world a safer place and to ensure a brighter tomorrow for future generations. Now known as Patriots Day, I love it. September 11th has become a day to honor the victims of this horrific tragedy through service to others. That is the legacy that is left behind in the aftermath of our collective trauma. Service to others. And we have so many wonderful people. I want to thank Keenan for putting this on, Mary, Julie Peluso, all of you. Thank you so very much for being here. This is incredible, and it's the best one ever, that's for sure. On a macro scale, we also saw enlistment in our armed forces spike after the attacks. These brave men and women who represent the best among us, I know you agree, stepped up to wage a war against terror itself. These were volunteers, as our governor said last night. They were committed to taking the battle to the enemy, to protect our homeland from further attacks, and they did succeed. They wanted to make sure that future generations would know what it was like to live in a world free of terror. These men and women served honorably and sacrificed greatly. We can all agree, ladies and gentlemen, I know we can, that the Americans who served in these operations did their duty and carried out the mission they were given with great distinction and honor. Isn't that true? We love them. We love them. And that we will always be there for them. Please thank them anywhere you see them. And if they need assistance, please give them that assistance. Please, ladies and gentlemen, they are true heroes. It is true that during the past 20 years, as you know, while they were executing their mission, we have not seen a large terror attack on American soil. That is an important and meaningful accomplishment and a tribute to their unwavering efforts. President Reagan once said, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. On this 20th anniversary of the terrorist attacks on our nation, may we remember the victims, honor the heroes who responded to the crisis, and rekindle the spirit of unity that spread across our country after the tragedy. It is through that unity, ladies and gentlemen, that we will find our best path forward. May God bless each and every one of you, and may God bless the greatest country on the face of the earth, the United States of America. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a great surprise, in fact, to be able to introduce you to a native Floridian who has captured the attention of America, if not the world. He has given the Sunshine State three things: courage, determination, and hope for the future. It is a pleasure to introduce you to a real friend of yours who thinks of all of you as part of his family. Ladies and gentlemen, the 46th governor of the state of Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Thank you for coming out. Thanks so much. Thank you for remembering 20 years. I was thinking when this anniversary was approaching how America changed when the 9/11 attacks happened. I grew up right down the street in Dunedin. I graduated high school in 1997. Yes, yes. And you kind of take it for granted, but looking back, growing up in the 90s, we had won the Cold War, we were prosperous, at peace. It was really a great time to be an American. Our country was really, in many respects, at the apex. We were the only superpower in the entire United States, and it seemed like the possibilities were endless. That September morning in 2001, when we were attacked by crazed terrorists, it changed our country and it changed the world in the 20 years since. And the first thing that, of course, you think about is the people that we lost that day. The mothers, the fathers, sisters, brothers. You had friends and neighbors, parents. It was left a huge hole, not just in the hearts of people in New York City or Shanksville, Pennsylvania, or Washington, D.C., but in the entire country and really around the entire world. And so their legacies have lived on as a result of America coming together during those times. And I've been able to meet folks who've been impacted by 9/11, and I can tell you this is unlike any event that we've had, certainly in my lifetime. So let's always remember their legacies. Let's also remember what people were doing to fight back, even in the immediate aftermath of those towers being hit. We talk now, it's like you talk about people in uniform. Not everyone always gives them credit in this day and age, which certainly I do. But just think of who the people were that were running into those buildings. These are the people that were wearing uniforms that said they would protect and serve, whether in the police, the fire, the Port Authority. And you lost hundreds of first responders in those towers, those folks going in there, ushering out many hundreds more to safety. And so they gave their lives to save other people's lives. And of course, 9/11 is the most significant type of event you could face. But anytime tragedy strikes, anytime people are in jeopardy, it's the folks that wear the uniform that are running into those fires. So let's thank all those people who serve us. Let's always have their back. But it wasn't just people wearing the uniform that day who fought back. United Flight 93 had taken off, was heading west. They got word on the plane, some of the passengers, about what had happened in New York City. And so they understood that, in all likelihood, the people that had hijacked their plane were going to do a similar attack using that aircraft and end up killing potentially thousands of more civilians. So they had a decision to make. Were you just going to hope for the best and hope that didn't happen, or were you going to take matters into your own hands, knowing that you'd be saving thousands of other people, but you would be ensuring your own demise? And so people like Todd Beamer, they stood up and they said, not on our watch. We are not going to let you destroy an American city. We're not going to let you murder thousands of our fellow citizens. we're going in, we're taking you out, and obviously they brought the plane down in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, giving up their own lives, but of course saving many, many hundreds, if not thousands of lives. So those folks on that flight who stood up, they stood up for all of us that day. We think it was going to go to Washington. Nobody really knows where it would have ended up going in, and they stood up for a lot of innocent people. So we should remember the heroes of Flight 93, United Flight 93. We should also remember the folks who stood up to bring justice to the people who brought the towers down. And I can tell you when that happened, you saw a lot of people sign up to be able to serve. I joined after 9/11. I served in the Iraq campaign. I know many people. We have many people probably here who served in either the Afghanistan or Iraq campaigns. And the thing that I think the 9/11 veterans don't get enough credit for is just how much weight was placed on their shoulders. The previous, most significant attack previous to 9/11 was, of course, Pearl Harbor. Pearl Harbor brought us into World War II. We defeated Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan. It was a righteous effort, and it saved the world. But every single American was enlisted in that in some way. I mean, you had a massive military draft. Everybody, towns would empty with people going off to war, and it was an entire mobilization. And they deserve credit as the greatest generation. The post 9/11, there was no draft. It was all volunteer, and not only volunteer, most of the people deployed were volunteering to go again. And so you place an enormous burden of years and years and years of combat deployment on a very, very small segment of our society. And you have people who had served 3, 4, 5 tours. Many of our special operators served many more tours than that. That is not a normal thing to be doing, to be put into those situations time and time again. And so the toll, obviously we had killed in action, we had wounded in action, but just the emotional toll that takes on people. We've worked with veterans coming back who suffer from post-traumatic stress. No wonder when you're over there that many times and having to face this that many times. The stress that it did on families has been off the charts. Unfortunately, it's caused breakups of families because you have folks that are over there. So let's just understand and appreciate. Yeah, you wore the uniform. Yeah, you put yourself out there, but you were called upon to do more than most previous generations with a very, very small number of our fellow citizens. When I was in Iraq, you could go to American cities and people wouldn't even know anybody who was involved in any of these military operations. And so it was a little bit different, and there was a lot of burden placed on a lot of very small segment of people, but they shouldered it, and regardless of how politicians have screwed up some of this stuff, every time our military men and women were given a mission, they succeeded, and they did honor for our country. So as we're here 20 years, I think we are all united, and never again. We will not allow this to happen. I think there was reasons why it did that should have been corrected, but we can't let it happen again. But we definitely have sent the message that America will respond. We were united after 9/11. It would sure be nice if we could have some of that unity in our country right now. So we thank everybody who has stepped up in the years since September 11th. And we had a tragic collapse of condos in Surfside, Florida a couple months ago, and I remember being there probably about 10 hours after it collapsed, looking, and it was a massive pile of rubble, and it was really heartbreaking because you hope you'd find a lot of people, but man, it was so catastrophic. And I immediately thought back to September 11th, and I said, as bad as this is, September 11th has got to be 100 times bigger with those big towers and everything. And so the people that sifted through that rubble, the people that went into those buildings, we see the similar stuff happening today when there's issues. And the fire folks in Miami did a great job down in Surfside. And I know if there's anything that happens in this community or any community across Florida, it's going to be those folks wearing the uniform that are going to be there for us. So thank you. We honor them. We honor the memories of those who we lost. We are inspired by the stories of so many survivors who many of them have moved to Florida in the intervening years, as a lot of people have. And so we are inspired by their stories, and we are sad, even now 20 years later, but we're also appreciative about the response and so many people who stood up to say, not on my watch, this is not going to happen. So God bless you all. Thank you for coming out to remember September 11th, 2001. God bless.
We love you!
Greatest governor in the nation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special piece of music for you now that I guess I could tell you this could easily be our second national anthem. Here to sing it is our first singer, Lee Greenwood with America the Beautiful.
Thank you very much. Check, check. Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains, majesties above the fruited plain. It's our America, America. God shed His grace on thee. Oh, and crowned our good with a little brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Forever America, yeah, yeah. Oh, America, America, the land we know that's free, and crowned our good just with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Let's hear it for America, y'all. Sea to shining sea, yeah, sea to shining sea.
The famous Lee Greenwood. Give this man a big round of applause. going to have him back one more time, and I bet you can guess what he's going to sing then. But not now. Not now. You know, for many people, the battle that began on 9/11 is still going on, not just emotionally, but physically. The death toll of those sickened from rescue and recovery efforts at Ground Zero continues to rise dramatically every year. The debris at the World Trade Center site, which contained asbestos, poisonous chemicals, toxins, and jet fuel, has sadly brought disease to thousands of unsuspecting heroes. And that's what they were, every one of them. A permanent memorial right here where you are. The Curlew Hills Memory Gardens honors the firefighters, the police officers, all the construction workers, and the volunteers who spent their valuable time in the rubble of the World Trade Center for rescue and recovery and have since died from illnesses related to their honorable work that meant so much. Each year at the 9/11 Memorial Ceremony, Curlew Hills updates this number of the memorial to honor those particular heroes who have been lost in this brave battle. And I have to tell you honestly, when I start to repeat the words every time, it haunts me, as it haunts all of you, because we can never forget what this meant to our country and to all of us individually. Today, this memorial indicates that there are 4,493 people who have succumbed to their illnesses related to the 9/11 cleanup efforts. Our keynote speaker is one of the survivors of 9/11, a retired member of the New York City Fire Department and 9/11 first responder. It is a pleasure now to welcome Mr. Garrett Lindgren.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Wow. Holy cow. I gotta say real quick, and I'm gonna be crunched for time, watching my wife because she's gonna give me a countdown. I have to say, and I know there's a lot of my brother and sister firefighters from FDNY and NYPD and EMS who were there that day. So they'll understand if they stop and think right now about their personal experience on that day. They'll understand how hard it is to put it into a few minutes of time. And that's why my wife is going to keep giving me the high sign, because I have a tendency to go long. I have to say I'm blessed. Everyone that I ever knew on the FDNY always said we had the greatest job on earth. We worked with great people, and we got to help people every time we went to work. When people are having their worst day, they dial 911, and the police and fire and EMS come running, depending on what the event is. And all of us, our job is to make things better. And I think we all did a great job of that over the years. 9/11 was uncharted waters for the emergency services. We couldn't have been trained any better to do the job we did. The unit I was in was actually a building collapse response unit in addition to being a firefighting unit. And we went to a lot of building collapses. Never planned for a couple of 106-story high-rise buildings and a 70-some-odd story high-rise building to collapse at one scene in one day. I had just gotten off work that morning, and I was actually coming from a firehouse I normally didn't work in, which required me to drive over the Triborough Bridge from Queens back to the Bronx, where I normally work. And I was actually heading to my firehouse. I was going to grab a cup of coffee and catch up with Captain Brian Hickey who had just gotten back to work from being badly injured in June of that year at a fire in a hardware store where the hardware store exploded and collapsed and killed 3 firefighters. 2 of them were his guys, and he was badly injured. So he had just come back to work. He was working overtime on the day shift of 9/11 in my firehouse. He normally worked in the house I was just coming from in Queens. Plan was I was going to have coffee with him, grab a shower, and then head home. Got on the Triborough Bridge and heard on the radio there's a fire at the Trade Center. Took a quick look to the left, and everyone, I'm sure, who was around back then saw what I was seeing, which was that massive hole in the North Tower, tremendous amount of fire showing on multiple floors, massive smoke condition, and I've been out of the firehouse about 5 minutes. Nothing was going on in the city, all minor stuff, but no major fires. It's a high-rise, fireproof high-rise building. Fire doesn't propagate that fast in a high-rise building that's fireproof and got sprinklers and all those other things. Plus the structural damage. I figured somebody had detonated a bomb. We knew that the Trade Center was a terrorist target. It had been hit in '93 with a truck bomb. The people that deployed the truck bomb told the FBI, we're not going to tell you when, but we're going to bring the towers down. So we knew it was a target. I saw the damage. I immediately assumed it was some type of terrorist attack. Put my foot to the floor and started racing to my firehouse. I knew they would have already responded, but I knew they were going to recall the entire department for this, 11,000 firefighters, which they did right when I got to the firehouse. They announced a recall. Teamed up quickly with my captain and a couple other firefighters. My captain was saved that day because he had been detailed out to dive recertification, because we did dive rescue. Otherwise, he would have been working where Captain Hickey was working. Fast forward, we got to the scene. The second tower had just come down. I had just gotten off the phone with my wife. The second tower was still up as we were approaching, and I told her a lot of us are going to die here today. I knew already that a lot of first responders had already died because the North Tower had fallen, and I knew that there were going to be members of every emergency service inside that building and just outside the perimeter of the building, still evacuating civilians. Told my wife that, quickly hung up the phone. I said, tell the kids I love them, give them a kiss, I love you, and I don't know if I'm coming back. And never in my life thought that way. Went to loads of fires. You can talk to any of the FDNY guys here. Back when we were on the job, it was busy. We did a ton of fire activity and lots of other emergencies. I never got on the rig and said, oh my God, I'm going to die when I get to this fire. I got on the rig and we used to yell at the chauffeur, go faster, because we didn't want to get beat in. We wanted to be the first unit there. This morning, I honestly felt like we weren't coming back. Got there, zero visibility, and couldn't make head or tails of anything. It was like standing in a blizzard at midnight up in the country where I lived. So it was totally silent, but it was like we were in a burning building out in the street because you couldn't see anything. We were actually literally almost bumping into burning emergency vehicles because you couldn't see them until you got close. There was no radio traffic on our fireground radio. There were hundreds of radio-equipped firefighters on that scene. My captain got on the radio. He called Rescue 3 a couple of times. There was no answer. And I don't know who it was, somebody in our crowd, because I couldn't see anybody, but somebody in our group told the whole group, he said, everybody is dead. Well, at that point, that was 2 5-alarm assignments. 1 5-alarm assignment from the FDNY is a massive turnout of personnel and equipment. It's hundreds of firefighters and a load of fire apparatus and special units and whatever. This was 2 5th alarms, and there's nobody on the radio. So it was very believable when that firefighter said everybody's dead. Eventually, we did hear some traffic, and all the traffic we were hearing initially was firefighters who were alive and they were trapped, mostly guys that were trapped out in the street under apparatus. And they were telling us exactly where they were. They knew, like one firefighter was a pump operator on an engine company, told us what engine he was, told us exactly where he was. I'm hooked up to a hydrant at the corner of West Street and wherever it was. And we just told him, we're coming for you, brother, don't worry, we're going to come for you. And we were saying that we were going to try to get there for him, but we were really saying that to try to encourage him to hang on, because we could hear he was badly hurt. You could hear it in his voice. And we had no idea where that location was. You couldn't see street signs. If they were there, they were totally covered with dust, but nothing looked like it had looked like before the first plane hit. You know, it didn't look anything like the World Trade Center. It looked like we were in some city in World War II. You know, it was a 16-acre pile of debris. So, you know, we tried to come up with a quick plan of action. Certainly our goal initially was to try to locate live victims. We eventually were notified by a ladder company captain from Ladder 6 that his entire company was in the B stairwell in the North Tower, and that they had a civilian that they had been carrying down. She was with them, and a Port Authority police officer was with them. They were trapped, they were injured, but they were stable. But they also said there's a couple of firefighters that we're communicating with verbally, not on the radio, and we can't get to them. There's no way to get through the debris we're in right now, but we know where they are, and they're in bad shape. And unfortunately, during that span of time while these guys were still trapped, slowly the lives of those two firefighters ebbed away, and they spoke less, and then they spoke weaker and weaker, and then they never heard from them again. So bad enough these poor people are trapped, but they're aware that there's people that need help right near them and they can't get them, and then they have to witness their death. This went on in all different shapes and forms. Everyone's got a story that was there, and one is more heartbreaking than another. My unit never found Ladder Company 6. Other firefighters found them hours later, and they were able to get ladders and ropes, and this was far into the debris field, and they were on, like, I don't know, I think maybe the 6th floor in this stairway, and it's the only part of the stairway that didn't get crushed. It's a miracle, really. But these firefighters from Engine 53 and Ladder 43 from Harlem finally found them, and they were able to get them out. We did participate in a couple of rescues that day. My personal involvement was just being blessed to put my hand on a Stokes basket 2 different times that day, where we were passing live civilians out of the rubble. And that was the best feeling that we could have had for the whole day, because these 2 people, we actually got to say some words of encouragement to them as we passed them to the next cop or the next firefighter in the line. And everyone did it, because it was just, wow, somebody's alive. We walked, at some points we were walking on the exterior skeleton of the towers that laid out across West Street. And very sadly, you would look down, and it was quite a distance down, but you would look down and you would see a crushed fire department Suburban or a crushed ladder truck or pumper, and firefighters you could see were underneath them, where they dove under these rigs when the towers started coming down. And we would send 1 or 2 firefighters down to check to see if there was any viable patients, and I found none. We didn't find any, and initially we had to leave them because we were looking for live victims. As I said earlier, to put this into the small time frame I have today is impossible. I hope that everybody feels the gravity of what we were exposed to. Again, it was a job I loved. And on that day, I never experienced a state of shock like I ended up in. I worked just by my training and my brain telling me, you got to do this, you got to help these people, you got to stay with the brothers and do what we're doing. But I don't even remember half of what went on. There's still guys I work with that'll say something, they'll remind me, and all of a sudden it'll click. It was more than anybody really could muster. The toughest guys I ever worked with on my job, that had 35 years on a job and worked through riots and everything else. Everybody had the blank stare that day. Every cop had the blank stare. Every EMS person had the blank stare. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the trades workers in New York City, iron workers, welders, unbelievable. I mean, they got right in with us. We tell them, hey, we got a recovery right here. He's under a box beam. They'd get whatever equipment they needed, start burning it, and show tremendous respect to every victim we would find. You know, they truly joined our ranks. You know, and they deserve a lot of credit too. A lot of them are sick and dying, and I think I'm going to leave off with that because I'm just picking and choosing little pieces of my experience that day. One thing is, 11:30 at night, I realized I hadn't spoken to my wife since right before we got there. North Tower was still up, and now it was down, and she never heard from me, and I told her I was gonna probably never come home. I called her 11:30 at night. She saw the caller ID on the phone, saw that it was my cell phone, and her immediate thought was, oh, somebody found Garrett's phone in the file. She really, already, my two kids, one was in high school, one was in the 8th grade, they all thought I was dead for the whole day. I actually had a member of my company come up to me at that point, right before I called my wife, and he had that blank stare, and he grabbed me and he got me in a bear hug, and he said, thank God. And I said, what? Because there wasn't a lot of things to thank God for that day, except that long later I realized that it was okay for me to survive, because the survivor guilt thing was another issue. But I said, what, Chris? He said, you're on the missing list. And that's what keyed me in. Oh no, I got to call my wife. If I'm on the missing list, she's probably getting phone calls from everybody's wife, and you know, kind of tiptoeing around that. And I was on the missing list because I got relieved a little bit early in the firehouse I'd worked in the night before. So my name was still in Rescue 4's apparatus on the dashboard, that I was the forcible entry man on Rescue 4, and no one had seen me, and they put me up there. So thankfully I was able. My wife was one of the lucky ones. Not lucky that she went through hell all day, but lucky that at the end of the day, she was able to tell my two kids, hey, Dad's alive. That was huge. I mean, that really, thank you. Our wives and our kids, and again, when I say our, I'm not just talking about firefighters. I see some uniformed police sitting here and sporting there, I think a PAPD maybe, right there. And we all had the same experiences. Our families went through hell. My wife, before 9/11, I don't know how she put up with me, but after 9/11, I was a disaster. I had PTSD, I didn't even know it. It took me years to realize, and then to finally reach out and get help. Fast forward now, I encourage other first responders to get help with PTSD. I try to counsel them myself with all that I've learned. There's no shame in that. Any of you that are out there that things aren't going well for you, there's no shame in that. There's shame if you don't get the help, because it changed my life. And by the way, before 9/11, I was, one of all my brothers and sisters out there. We're tough guys, I go to fires, force doors and crawl into burning buildings, and we were tough guys through that. Nobody was a tough guy after 9/11. You might have thought you were, but no way. It was more than you can muster. I'll leave you with this. As I said earlier, always we refer to the FDNY as the greatest job on earth. The day after 9/11, we went back to the site, and people were already making up like oak tag signs with magic marker and putting them under the windshield wipers of whatever fire apparatus they could find that said, still the greatest job on the face of the earth. And the attitude of the firefighters then was, it was in the face of the terrorists. You killed a bunch of our guys, but we're still here, and we're still gonna do what we do. And every one of us right now, if something like that happened again, wouldn't even think twice. We all have terrible health issues that we're going through. We would do that all again in a second, because that's what first responders do. That's what the military does, and it's our country. And we're all patriotic, and we love our country. We love what we did that day, and the FDNY is still the greatest job on the face of the earth. I wish I could still be there doing it. God bless you all today. I am so excited to see this many patriotic Americans in one place. The only other thing I want to say, and I swear it's the last thing, I was set up this morning. I was told to only speak like 7 minutes, and I know I'm beyond that. And I wasn't told that I was going to follow our great governor and Lee Greenwood. What's with that? Thank you all so much. You guys rock.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the heroes of that day, one of the survivors, and one that we are all grateful for. Garrett Lindgren, thank you for coming. Wish you the best. God bless you. Yes, sir. For all of those we honor today who did not survive, I'm going to ask you to stand now for taps.
All uniform personnel, attention! Reset! Move!
We will raise and lower the flag to half-staff in memoriam to honor those souls that we lost on that fateful day that we are all part of. Guards and retired District Fire Chief Tom Fritz will now play Amazing Grace.
Order! Move!
perpetual flame will be lighted now by retired Palm Harbor firefighter Bill Swingle and Louis Kikus, retired FDNY. Wreaths will be placed by the Palm Harbor Fire Department members Steve Gorby and Craig Rogers, Rescue and Recovery. Garrett Lindgren, retired FDNY, Rich Michio, retired FDNY, and Hitch and Bobby Anderson, retired FDNY, Ann Coster, a 9/11 survivor, and Diana Kopek, a 9/11 essential worker. The bell will be tolled by Scott Sanford, Chief of the Palm Harbor Fire Department and Rescue.
All uniform personnel, attend! Present! Order!
Remain standing for our benediction that will be offered by Pastor Milton Smith, chaplain of the Palm Harbor Fire Rescue.
Ceremonial. Rest.
First, the bell will be tolled to commemorate this day.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. As you can see by today, the fire department is rich and steeped in tradition, and that is what you're witnessing here today. One of those traditions is the tolling of the bell. The bell has a significance in the fire service because it's how we used to communicate. They would use the bell to notify that there was a problem and somebody needed help. They would toll the bell to signify the beginning of a shift, and they would also toll the bell at the end of the day to let everybody know that everybody made it home safe. The tradition that we're going to honor right now is the tolling of the bells in what's called the 4-5s. The 4-5s has its tradition in the fire department of New York City, and it is respect that is given to firefighters when they pay the ultimate sacrifice. So with that, Luca Patron from Palm Harbor Fire Rescue is now going to present the 4-5s in honor of everybody that lost their lives associated with 9/11. Thank you.
All uniform personnel, attend! Present!
Ladies and gentlemen, our benediction is offered by Pastor Milton Smith, chaplain of the Palm Harbor Fire Rescue.
Let us offer a closing prayer. We have remembered, we have honored, we have paid tribute for the many lives lost on September 11, 2001. Now, as we prepare to go our separate ways, may the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you grace. The Lord lift his countenance upon you and give this nation, this world, and each one of you his divine peace. Amen.
I want to ask you to be seated. We are just about done, but you need to rest a little bit in this heat. And we have one more number for you, too. As we come to the close of the commemoration of this 20th anniversary of this cataclysmic event that produced the longest war in American history, we can never forget the deadly cost of this war and the lives lost and those affected by it forever. The total cost of military action alone in Afghanistan and Iraq comes to $2 trillion. 20 years later, for whatever reasons, we have not been able to close the military, intelligence, and political divisions that divide this country and completely close the book on what we will remember as the longest war in America's history. On behalf of all of those involved here at Curlew Hills, the police, the fire departments, rescue, and all of them, thank you for coming. We can only hope and pray that nothing like this ever happens again. I leave you with the reminder to drive carefully as you go home. God bless you, family. God bless the United States of America and those who survived 9/11. One or two more notes. Guests are invited to visit the 9/11 memorial display tables, as well as the artwork from Ozona Elementary, Westlake Christian School, Curlew Creek Elementary, and Sutherland Elementary. And we now close it all. And it's a pleasure to introduce you to, again, a man who's going to sing that famous song that he wrote that has become such an important part of what we are all about. Lee Greenwood, and God bless the USA.
Thank you. I'm to wait just a moment because I believe we're going to have a flyover. I'm going to try to time it so that we see that first. If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again, just my children and my wife. Thank my lucky stars to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today, 'cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. Of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, Detroit down to Houston, and New York to LA. There's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me. And I gladly stand up next to you and defend her till today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Never forget 9/11.
I'll tell you guys.